Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Sickle Cell Action Network, a weekly internet radio show presented by Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative and sponsored by Mast Therapeutics. We're coming to you live from Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're here to serve you by providing up-to-date information and opinion on all matters pertaining to sickle cell disease. My name is Gary A. Gibson, and I am your host for the next 2 hours. Let me start by saying that I don't have sickle cell disease, nor do I carry the sickle cell trait. In spite of that, I am no stranger to sickle cell. Quite the contrary. You see, even though I don't have sickle cell, it has had a very huge impact on my life. That's true because its complications took my wife from me after 12 years of marriage. It also caused her to have a miscarriage that resulted in the loss of our twin babies that she was carrying while in a sickle cell crisis. So all told, sickle cell has taken 3 lives from me, and I feel the pain of those losses every single day. I currently serve as the president and CEO of Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative, a community-based organization that has been serving people with sickle cell for over 45 years. Each day I attempt to transform the pain of my losses into positive energy that is focused on making a difference for those who are battling sickle cell. From being involved with sickle cell for over 40 years, I'm able to say that much progress has been made, but there is still so much work to do. This show is an opportunity to contribute to the ever-expanding dialogue about sickle cell that is taking place all around the world. Our show is about raising awareness, but it is also about so much more. I like to say that sickle cell awareness is important, but we need more than awareness. Those living with sickle cell are already aware. That makes me ask, what are we doing for them? My answer is, not enough. That's why we've named this show the Sickle Cell Action Network, because awareness without action has very little impact. We want this show to be a source of information and a call to action to help those who must live with sickle cell in their midst. We've designed the show to provide information that is beneficial to patients, caregivers, family members, and friends alike. Most importantly, we want people with sickle cell to know and understand that they are not alone. The Sickle Cell Action Network show features live guests who are healthcare providers, patients, advocates, and others who are engaged in the fight to eradicate sickle cell and ease its burden on those it affects. Today we're going to be talking about working to stop the pain of sickle cell. We'll discuss newborn screening follow-up programs, what they are, and why they're important. We'll be talking to MCSCI's own Sherry Coleman about that. Then we'll talk with Mary Brown, the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation of California. Mary will be joining us by phone to tell us about her organization and how they helped establish an adult sickle cell clinic in Los Angeles. We're serious about sharing valuable information, and we hope that you will join us every week, same time, same station. If you've missed some of our previous editions or wish that you could listen to them again, don't worry. Just go to the Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative YouTube page, and you'll find them there. Now, let's get on with our show, and we'll start with this week's edition of Sickle Cell News Update. We typically will share information with you about things that are happening in the sickle cell world around the world, and today is no exception. Today we're going to talk about several stories, and the first is coming to us from Nigeria. We keep a lot of focus on Nigeria, of course, because Nigeria is the country in the world that has the highest prevalence of sickle cell disease, the highest birth rate, and the highest number of people living with sickle cell. And this story comes to us from The Guardian, and the headline is Nigeria Hematologist Advocates Free Treatment for Sickle Cell Patients. And it goes like this. Dr. Ezra Jatau, a consultant hematologist with the Jos University Teaching Hospital, has advocated for free treatment of people living with sickle cell disease in Nigeria. The consultant made the suggestion recently in Jos at a symposium organized by Mr. Yaji Ibrahim, a medical student of Brigham University. The event, tagged Stand Down Sickle Cell Disease 2016, was aimed at creating more awareness on the dangers of the disease. According to Jatau, treatment of sickle cell anemia requires huge resources, hence the need for government to step in and make treatment available in public hospitals. It is no longer news that treating sickle cell disease is very expensive and very frustrating. We all know that this is a disease that stays in people for life, which means that they will need to be medically maintained for a lifetime, he said. This demands serious and huge financial involvement, and most people get to die because they lack the financial wherewithal to take care of themselves. Dr. Jatau continued on saying, so I feel government can enact some policies whereby those living with disease can be treated free, especially at government hospitals. It will go a long way to cushion the suffering of those whose loved ones are living with the disease, thereby reducing the rate of mortality in the society, he said. Jatau, however, said prevention remains the best way in handling the disease, and charged intending couples to ascertain their genotype before getting married. The consultant urged medical personnel and the public not to stigmatize people living with the disease, stressing that care and concern to victims elongates their lives. He also urged government to create more awareness and sponsor research to stem the spread of the disease in the country. On his part, Ibrahim, the convener, said the symposium was organized to raise awareness of the disease, as most people were ignorant of it. He added that the symposium was to push for a law that would compel prospective couples to know their genotype before marriage. While the doctors may know the medical implication of sickle cell anemia on the society, there is the need for lawyers to all make the position of the law known in this regard. So the essence of this basically to proffer solutions to the looming problems that usually arise as a result of the continued spread of this disease, he said. Ibrahim pledged to carry the campaign on sickle cell across the country to ensure that people become knowledgeable about the disease, its management, and ways to avoid contracting it. So that's from Nigeria, with individuals pushing for the government to intervene and provide free care and treatment to people living with sickle cell disease. The next story comes from Louisiana, actually I think Lake Charles, Louisiana, and it says 2 brothers with sickle cell disease await transplants. And the article reads, 2 brothers are in a crisis this morning, hospitalized because of the severe pain of their sickle cell disease. 14-year-old Kevin Francis and 10-year-old Jay Vin were born with sickle cell disease, an inherited blood disorder that can cause severe pain and damage throughout the body. Their hope for long-term relief is riding on successful stem cell transplants from their brother, Jordan. The fight to get to transplant day affects every aspect of this family's life. Alicia Gilroy is the boy's mother, superwoman, caregiver, and the person who never leaves their bedside. She says watching her boys in intense pain never gets easier. It's unexplainable, she said. You just don't get used to it. They've both been through so much and so much pain. On this day, Kevin is in the pediatric unit at the Lake Charles Memorial Hospital trying to stabilize after a sickle cell crisis. It feels like something's just poking my body everywhere, he said. Once the pain comes, it starts to spread like it's trying to attack you. Kevin trembles in his hospital bed from the pain and the medicine to manage it. His brother, Javen, has been there before as well, far too many times to count. Makes me feel bad, said Javen. Puts me in a crisis. Just a few hours after our interview, Javen was also admitted to the pediatric unit, moving from the playroom to another hospital bed. The most promising relief from these hospitalizations and intense bouts of pain is through a stem cell transplant. A match is confirmed with one of the boy's 2 other brothers without the disease. I said, Jordan, you know you're the match to cure your brothers, said Gilroy. He was like, yes. He was excited. Kevin is set to go to New Orleans to start the process next week, where he will eventually get his brother's bone marrow to restore his own immune system and make normal red blood cells. He will be in the hospital for at least 3 to 4 months. Gilroy's husband will stay in Lake Charles with their other sons while he works as a parking lot supervisor. She has had to take an unpaid leave of absence from her job at McDonald's, handling the round-the-clock care that comes with this stage of the disease. In the midst of all of this stress, Gilroy has tried to sell hot lunches she prepares in her kitchen to help pay the bills. I did hot links, chips, cake, soda, she said. One week I did red beans and rice, sausage, cake, cornbread. I did pulled pork sandwiches. But Gilroy says the financial uncertainty does not compare to what is a day-to-day fight for survival right now, trying to get these boys well enough for a possible cure to work. I would rather say I gave them a chance with trying to cure them than not giving them a chance at all, she said. Kevin is ready, but guarded. I want to do it, but I don't know whether it's going to cure me or not. I'm trying to not to get my hopes up a lot, he said. And Javen is ready to be next in line, even though the process is scary. I hope that it works, and that I don't have sickle cell anymore, he said. Kevin will be admitted to Children's Hospital in New Orleans on September 27th. He will be taking several medications and undergoing chemo to get his body ready for his brother's stem cells. The family is working to raise the money to help offset their expenses while they spend several months in New Orleans. So, to Kevin and Javen, certainly would wish you the best and would like you to know that last week on our show we spoke with Camilla Quinones, who is a 36-year-old woman who had a successful stem cell transplant in October 2013, and yes, she is cured. So it is possible, and we are pulling for the family. And our final story for today, this is a good one as well, and the headline is FDA Commissioner Sees a Future Where Gene Editing Will Cure Disease. And this comes to us from the University of Miami News. 4 years ago, if someone had told FDA Commissioner Robert Califf that soon it might be possible to remove disease-causing genes from organisms and replace them with healthy ones, he would have called such genetic manipulation the stuff of science fiction. But it turns out that we now have technologies that can do this, Califf said Wednesday while delivering the keynote address to open the symposium, Improving Clinical Research in the Age of Precision Medicine, held at the University of Miami's Bank United Center September 14th and 15th. We've gone from looking at the downstream products of what genes do and using genes to make a diagnosis to actually being able to go in and to either delete a gene, insert a new gene in place of a gene that was there, or add a gene to the genome. And doing it is very specifically with little molecular scissors, Califf said. The two-day symposium, hosted by University of Miami's Office of Research Compliance and Quality Assurance in collaboration with the FDA Office of Regulatory Affairs, Florida District, and the FDA Office of Minority Health, focused on the scientific, regulatory, and ethical aspects of clinical trials, as well as quality assurance practices. Speaking to an audience of about 450 researchers, physicians, scientists, nurses, and other medical professionals, Califf pointed to sickle cell disease, which affects about 300,000 babies a year around the world, as one illness that could perhaps be cured through gene therapy. We have therapies that make sickle cell disease better, but we don't have a cure for it, said Califf. It looks like now we might be able to apply this technology. Indeed, researchers from Dana-Farber, Boston Children's Cancer and Blood Disorders Center recently reported in the Journal of Clinical Investigation that a genetically engineered virus that triggers the production of an alternate form of hemoglobin reversed sickle cell disease symptoms in mice, clearing the way for possible human clinical trials in the near future. Advancements in genomics are just some of the tools in an ever-growing arsenal to wipe out disease and boost the field of precision medicine. The direct involvement of patients themselves in the development of therapeutics is also playing a major role, Califf explained, pointing to the electronic health records as an example of that involvement. So we want to thank Mr. Califf for making reference to sickle cell disease in his keynote address at the University of Miami back in September 14th and 15th, talking about the hope that is promised through gene editing therapy when it comes to sickle cell disease. And those are our stories for today. We are going to take a break, and when we return, we're going to start speaking here in studio with Sherry Coleman, the Director of Education and Outreach Programs for Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative. And we're going to be talking about newborn screening follow-up and how important that is when it comes to helping to stop the pain of sickle cell. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network show. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host. Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network. Tuesday, September 20th, 2016. Beautiful day in Indianapolis, a little warm but sunny skies. And we are here talking about working to stop the pain and really want people to understand there's a tremendous amount of activity happening in the sickle cell world, and a lot of it, if not most of it right now, is good. Among the things that are happening are some things that have been happening for a long time, and they're still a crucial part of the fight against sickle cell. Joining me to speak about that is Sherry Coleman, the Director of Education and Outreach Programs for Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative, And Sherry is going to spend time here with us talking about newborn screening follow-up programs. I know a lot of you hear that term. A lot of you may not understand newborn screening follow-up. So what we want to do is ensure that you get a sense for what newborn screening follow-up is. And so to do that, we're going to ask Sherry to help us with that. But before we do, I do it to everybody. I'm going to ask you too, Sherry. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've been on the show a couple times before, so that's because you're valuable in this effort to fight sickle cell, so we brought you back.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Okay, so please tell us a little bit about yourself and, where are you from? How long have you been serving in this role at Martin Center?
I've been serving in this role for 2 years.
Okay. Doing a good job.
Thank you. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. I'm very active in the community with fitness and wellness. And I enjoy really what I do.
Okay. So where are you from?
Indianapolis.
Okay. And so, in your words, what is newborn screening follow-up?
Newborn screening follow-up is a series of tests that identifies the conditions that can affect a newborn's health.
Okay.
If it's undetected, the screening actually prevents diseases that can be detected at an early stage.
Okay.
So that's why we have newborn screenings.
So we want to try to identify what kind of conditions a child may have at the earliest possible opportunity, right? So
Yes.
that we can try to respond to that.
Right.
And so why is newborn screening and newborn screening follow-up so important in the fight against sickle cell?
Well, let me go back just a little bit because there's probably people out there that don't even know how the test is administered to the baby.
Okay.
So when a baby is between 12 and 48 hours old, a few drops of blood is taken from the baby's heel.
Called a heel stick.
Called a heel stick, yes. The blood is usually placed on a small card. The card is sent to a laboratory where it's screened for different metabolics and genetic conditions.
Okay.
So that's where it starts first, and then why is it so important is because the newborn screening is the way that we find babies that have certain medical conditions. And for example, for sickle cell, in most cases, babies look normal and healthy, but they usually don't begin showing symptoms until about age 3 months to 8 months.
Okay. So when that happens, we're trying to say we want people to know that your child has sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease, and we're concerned about both, but we're more concerned about disease because of the complications that come along with the disease. So we want people to know with as much advance notice that their child, even though they don't look sick today, will start to get sick later on.
Correct.
So that they can be prepared for it and they can start treating the child to try to minimize any problems that they have.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so when did newborn screening follow-up start?
Here in Indiana, 1985.
Okay, and then around the rest of the country?
Late 70s.
Oh, late 70s, okay. And then basically what we want to let people know, like you said, they're tested for a variety of things, and it might be different based on what state you live in. But here in Indiana, we're testing between somewhere in 45 and 52 different conditions.
Correct.
And sickle cell and sickle cell trait are both among those that they're being tested for. But in other states, it might be slightly different. They might test for more, they might test for less. But it really wasn't only until recent times, and I'm thinking maybe less than 10 years ago, that every state did not test for sickle cell. So now we have that in place, and it's a good thing. Here in Indiana, like I said, we test for over 45 disorders that a baby might have when they're born. We, at Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative, only get the results that were positive for sickle cell trait. And once we do get those results, what do we do once we receive those results from the State Department of Health?
So the process is once I receive it in the database, they give us the baby's name, the baby's PCP, and the mother's information.
Okay, the baby's PCP is the
doctor.
The primary care provider, right?
Okay. So once I get that information, I reach out to the doctor to find out if the newborn is actually being seen there.
Okay.
If not, then that's when the challenge starts. Then I
Okay.
try to reach out to the mom to see if she's changed providers.
Okay.
Sometimes I can't reach the mom
Right.
because the phone number is not correct, and if the doctor doesn't have where the baby is being seen at, then that becomes a bigger challenge. But just say, for example, if I have all the information, that would be a good case. Then what I do is I print out the letter, and then I mail it to the doctor, and I also mail it to the mom,
Okay.
so that they know that their baby has the trait.
Okay.
Because we only deal with the trait. We don't deal with the sickle cell disease.
Right. There's another organization that deals with the trait. With the disease. So this gets to be sort of challenging sometimes, though, doesn't it? Because
It's very
reaching the patient, the
It's
parents,
very challenging. And if
and the doctors too. It's hard to reach them sometimes.
Yes. Sometimes the letter will have the wrong information about the doctor, or the doctor has relocated, and we just don't have any further information on that. So it's imperative that when the baby is born that we get the accurate information so that we can follow up on the screenings and get that information to the proper people.
Which means it's imperative that the parents, especially the parents, make sure that they are leaving valid contact information, right?
Right. And if they are one that changes their phone number or their address frequently, then I always say refer to grandmas, to grandmothers.
Right,
You know,
right.
they always have the same address most times and always have the same phone number so that we can get in contact with you.
So here's a worst case scenario: is that a baby tests positive for trait or disease, and let's use the disease as an example. Let's say a baby tested positive for disease, but we don't have good contact information out there. So what might happen then is that the parent will one day be surprised a few months down the road.
Could be, or maybe not until the baby goes to school, wants to play sports, need an exam done. And one of the questions now for sports is, do you have sickle cell? And the mother remembers, well, I have the trait, the father has the trait, and yes, but then they don't know where to get that information from.
We get hundreds of these every
Yes.
year, right?
Yes, we do.
And we are fairly successful in closing. We call it closing the case, meaning we get the information and then we reach out and we're able to confirm that we made the contact, we shared the results, etc. So we're running a really high rate because I track that as part of my duties, and we're very close to 100% in terms of being able to close cases, but sometimes we can't because those people didn't leave a current address. We also have sometimes get bad information about who the primary care provider is, so we can't close the case because we can't reach them.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Any suggestions on how that can be changed?
Basically, it's just giving, like I said, some accurate information. If you're going to be moving, or if you even think you're going to be moving, give the information that we can get in touch with someone, or someone that can get in touch with you. Otherwise, you may not know until it's late.
Okay. So, Sherry, I imagine that you hear all kinds of things when you do get in touch with people and you're able to give them these positive results on those tests. And, what are some of the kinds of reactions that you get from parents when you tell them that their child has sickle cell trait?
Different reactions. Most times, the mother will already know. She will go, oh, yes, I know. I have the trait, or the dad has the trait or the disease, but there has been some occasions that I've called and I've been hung up on and told that, no, my baby does not have that. My baby is not Black or African American. You've got the wrong baby. Some get irate about it and don't want to believe that their baby has the trait. So, and then others are, well, how did you find out about this information? When did my baby get tested for it? How do you know?
They didn't even know it was newborn screen.
Correct, and that's why I went to explain how this is done from the first beginning. So a lot of people are so uneducated about sickle cell and how you get it and where it comes from and that sort of nature.
And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail after our next break, but I think it's important that we stress the need to be sure that you have valid contact information on file. and to understand that that is really for your benefit and for the benefit of your family to do so. And sort of like, if I think you said this yesterday when we were talking, something about if you knew that you were going to win the lottery, wouldn't you want to be sure they knew how to get in touch with you? Or vice versa, if you knew that you were going to have a life of challenges, wouldn't you kind of want to know? So that's kind of where we're coming from with the importance of newborn screening follow-up. We'll come back after our break, and we'll talk a little bit more about how does sickle cell spread and how we get this information to tell people about when it comes to newborn screening follow-up. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network show. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host. Hi, I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host for the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. If you are impacted by sickle cell disease in any way, whether you are a patient, a caregiver, or a friend, you need to join me every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I promise that you will find our show to be full of information, perspective, and opinion about all things sickle cell. See you Tuesday right here on RadioNext.tv, the Cool Groove site. Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network show. Just want to mention that our friend P. Allen Jones, who is a loyal follower of the Sickle Cell Action Network show, just did a tweet that I think is worthy of repeating, and basically reminding people sickle cell is a blood disorder, not a race disorder. So what we're talking about today when it comes to newborn screening and the results of newborn screening, we're going to be talking about sickle cell trait, sickle cell disease, how it's transmitted. Keep in mind that this is a blood disease that affects and can affect any human regardless of race. And that is a good point, Ms. Jones. Thank you for that. So, Sherry, we're speaking with you about this whole thing of newborn screening, and when we are giving the results, we're giving the results of something that has already taken place. Mm-hmm. In other words, a baby has been born, a baby was conceived, and in the conception process, genetics were involved. And those genetics, when it comes to sickle cell, are actually not too complex. Not easy for everybody to understand, but they're not too complex. And Sherry's making faces as if, well, it is a little complex. But in a way it isn't when you look at it scientifically. So basically, we'd like to just share with you for a few minutes what happens, how sickle cell is transmitted. So in the first case, if you have a parent that has sickle cell trait, and a parent that has normal hemoglobin. So for those of you who may not truly understand this, the hemoglobin is what is involved with sickle cell. It's issues with the hemoglobin. So a person who has sickle cell trait has what's known as hemoglobin AS. A person who has normal blood without sickle cell has hemoglobin AA. So the A is for one of your parents, the S is for the other, and when you get your genes, you get one pair of DNA from your mother and one pair of DNA from your father, and this is how we track this. So if you have AA, which is normal, and you have AS, which is trait, as parents, what might happen?
So if you have AA and then SF?
AS.
Oh, AS. So then if you have that, 1 and 2, which is 50%, that the baby will have regular hemoglobin, which is AA. 1 and 2, 50%, that the baby will have sickle cell trait, which is AS.
Okay. So basically, you're going to have either sickle cell trait or you're going to have normal hemoglobin. There is no way of knowing ahead of time what you will get. This is something that happens very, very microscopically and under natural circumstances that nobody can truly predict. But what you can predict is that there is a 50% chance that and by the way, these statistics that you just gave are for every conception, every baby, right? Yes. Every pregnancy. So every time there's a 50% chance that the baby will have sickle cell trait or the baby will have normal hemoglobin, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what if one parent has what if both parents have sickle cell trait? What if both parents have hemoglobin AS? What might happen?
If both parents have hemoglobin AS,
Yes.
then you've got 1 in 4, which is a 25% chance that the baby's hemoglobin will be regular, which
Okay.
is AA.
Okay.
2 in 4, 50% chance that the baby will have SCT, which is trait
Right.
AS. Then 1 in 4, 25% that the baby will have sickle cell disease, SS.
Right. So this is where it starts to really get serious.
Yes.
Right? So if you have both parents that have sickle cell trait, there is at least a 25% chance with each pregnancy that that child would have sickle cell disease.
Correct.
Okay. I think a lot of people don't know this stuff.
No.
But you can see it's not really complex, but it's unknown. So what we want to do is try to help people understand why it's important for you to get tested and know what your sickle cell status is. What if one parent has sickle cell disease, which is hemoglobin SS or hemoglobin SC or even hemoglobin beta thalassemia, SB? What if one parent has sickle cell disease and the other parent has normal hemoglobin? What might happen?
All the children will have sickle cell trait.
All of the children will have sickle cell trait. If one parent has the disease and one parent has normal hemoglobin, there's a 100% chance that each child will have the trait. And then finally, if one parent has sickle cell disease and one parent has sickle cell trait, hemoglobin AS and hemoglobin SS, or again SC or SB. And by the way, there's different varieties of sickle cell. We've mentioned this on the show before, and there's multiple varieties, and there are multiple results that can come from this. But this is generalized. What might happen if one parent has disease and one parent has trait?
1 in 2, 50%, that the baby will have sickle cell trait.
And?
1 in 2, 50%, that the baby will have sickle cell disease.
Okay, so this is where it is really serious. A 50% chance that each child will have sickle cell disease if you have a situation where one parent has trait and the other person has disease. So we hope that you can see how this works, how this transmits, and why it's important. It's very, very important to know what your sickle cell status is. And here we are in September, which is actually Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and we want people to understand from an awareness point of view that you need to know what your sickle cell status is. You need to know what your blood type is, and we need to ensure that you get out there and get tested if you don't know. So that leads me to this question, Sherry. A lot of people of childbearing age still don't know their sickle cell status. If they were born before newborn screening became commonplace, like we said, in the mid-'80s, early '80s, and whatnot, if they were born before that, or if they lost track of the results that they had, they might still run the risk of conceiving a child with the disease or the trait. What can these people do? Where can they go to get tested?
Contact clinics or their doctors. Maybe they have a private doctor that they can go to get tested. We're actually at one time we used to do testing,
right.
And we're actually still working on trying to get that back, just
Right.
so that we can have that for our community as well.
Right.
If they have questions about where they can go or what they need to do, they can contact their local sickle cell organization, and there's about 42
Right.
organizations around the country.
Right. And a couple of those actually do the screening themselves, and we're trying to join them again. But this is important. I mean, we cannot stress this enough. And for those of you that are in the community, those of you that are regular listeners of the Sickle Cell Action Network show, you can help. You can help by trying to spread this word too. You can help by telling people, whenever you meet somebody, it doesn't have to be the first couple of sentences that you can ask them, but through your conversation somewhere, you can say, hey, by the way, do you know your sickle cell status? And that will start a conversation that might lead them to think, you know what, come to think of it, no, I don't.
And especially if they're talking about having a family or starting a family, it is so important that they do know that.
Yeah.
Or if their significant other has a trait or the disease. If they have the disease, of course, they're going to know.
Right.
But the trait is unknown at some times.
Right. It's mostly silent, and you will not know unless you get the test, and so that's really important. So we're going to shift again because we're now into the sort of the awareness phase of this. And another part of your job, Sherry, is that of educating the public, and that's what we're trying to do here now. We educate about sickle cell disease and sickle cell trade, and as a part of your job, you participate in a lot of health fairs throughout the year. In your opinion, what is the level of knowledge about sickle cell out there in the community?
Very low.
Very low.
Yeah.
It's distressingly low.
Very, very low. They just don't understand it, or what is sickle cell? A lot of people haven't even heard of it. And to be quite truthful, I didn't hear of it until I started getting connected with you, Morton Center.
Mm-hmm.
So the knowledge is just not out there. So that's why we need to really spread the word and talk about it as much as we can and get the information out to as many people as we possibly can.
So when you're out there in the community and you're talking to people and you say, so what do you know about sickle cell? You say that a lot, do you know about sickle cell? What do you know about it, or whatever? You find a lot of people say, yeah, I've heard of it. And that's
what
about
is it?
Or what is it? But for those that say, yeah, I've heard of it, that's pretty much the extent of their knowledge, though, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And even to expound on that, this year, 2016, a report was made from the American Society of Hematology. Did a report this year, and on a scale of 10 for training and professional education, it scored 3.2.
I'm glad you brought that up, and we talked about that a little bit last week, but that's important because not only does the general populace not know so much about sickle cell, but according to the American Society of Hematology, not a whole lot of doctors really know about it either.
Correct.
And that's not a good thing because you are very reliant upon the medical community, the medical profession, if you have sickle cell disease, and you certainly want them to know as much as possible.
Yeah, and let me do a quote from them. There are not enough healthcare providers with comprehensive knowledge and expertise to care for people with sickle cell disease.
Wow. So we have a lot of work to do. We have made a lot of progress over the years, and that progress has accelerated dramatically over the last few years, and I really mean that seriously, over the last few years. But there's still so much work to do in getting the knowledge level to where it ought to be for a disease as complex and as devastating as sickle cell can be. And it really bothers me personally that those that you would go to for help, primarily the doctors, they don't know what to do for you. And we've talked about this a couple times on the show before, but the amount of time that is spent on sickle cell for doctors in medical school, also for nurses in nursing school, is documented to be very, very light. And that needs to change for the sake of those that live with sickle cell.
Totally agree.
So as you're talking to these people and you're asking them what they know about sickle cell, and either they've heard of it, or they have not heard of it, don't know what it is, how willing are people to learn about it once you start talking about it?
They are.
Okay.
They're really. They take the literature. They will also tell me that they're going to give it to someone that they do know that's going to start a family, or they want to give it to someone in their family that has sickle cell. So it's not like they don't want to learn. It's just that they don't have the knowledge or never even heard of it in some cases.
A lot of times we find people that just, like I say, we've heard of it or they've heard of it. They don't understand what it is. And now it's good to see that they're willing to learn what it is. But the next step then is to help spread the awareness. So what, in your opinion, can people do to help us spread awareness about sickle cell? The average person, what can they do?
Continue to talk about it. Just talk about it. Word of mouth is your most powerful way of getting a message out there. Tweet about it, message about it, Facebook about it. Let's just get together as a whole and help this cause.
Mm-hmm. And this is important. What we have learned is that sickle cell affects a large number of people in this country. Depending on where you live, there may be pockets of sickle cell patients, large numbers, and or there may be virtually none. But in general, There are estimates that there may be as many as 25 million people with sickle cell disease around the globe, and that makes it a really important issue, particularly when you see the effect that it has on people's lives. When you see the impact that it has on our community, when you see the impact it has on our economy, when you see the impact it has on the healthcare system, it takes on a much bigger issue. So, Sherry, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you for sharing the information about newborn screening and sickle cell awareness. We are about ready to take a break, and when we do come back from that break, we will hopefully have Ms. Mary Brown, who is the executive director of the Sickle Cell Disease the Sickle Cell Disease Foundation of California. So look for that on the other end of our break. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host. Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host, and we thank you for being with us today here on Tuesday, September 20th, and that's September 20th, 2016. I'm very, very honored to have the opportunity to do this next interview with someone who is actually, in my opinion, an icon in the sickle cell field here, particularly in the United States, but certainly she's well known because of her longtime involvement with sickle cell, and especially with the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. And I'm speaking of none other than Mary Brown, who is the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation of California. Mary, I'd like to first of all thank you for giving us your time today, and thank you for being here on the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show.
Thank you, Gary. I'm pleased to be here and hope that some of my comments may be able to resonate with some of your listeners.
Thank you. So always ask my guests so that people can know who they are, to please tell us a little bit about yourself first, and where are you from originally, and how long have you been serving as the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation of California?
Well, I was born and raised here in Los Angeles, California, and I'm proud to say that I'm third generation. My grandparents were also born here, as well as my parents. So that's kind of an odd situation here in California when you think about how many transplants, as we call them, come into the state.
Right.
I have been serving in my current capacity for about 14 years, but I started as a volunteer with the Sickle Cell Foundation in 1974. And I just fell in love with the population. I fell in love with the strength and the resilience of people with sickle cell disease, and I felt that I should be able to make some contribution to help them along their path. And I stopped teaching and came over to the Sickle Cell Foundation for a part-time job and ended up making this a career. So it's been a labor of love, but something I would never change.
Oh, wow. And to be honest, yes, you have made a difference, Mary. So what brought you there in the first place? You said you started as a volunteer, but what motivated you? Someone like you could have gone and given your time and efforts as a volunteer anywhere. Why sickle cell? What happened?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I was, again, teaching kindergarten, and a colleague of mine came to me and said they need a camp director for the sickle cell camp program in Los Angeles. Are you interested? And I think the reason that she asked that question was because I was part of the Girl Scout program, and everybody on the campus knew that was something I had done for the last couple of years. And I looked at her and said, "What is sickle cell?" And the whole world then opened up for me.
Right.
I applied for the position, and I received the position. It was volunteer, of course, and I started working as a camp director and helping them to develop a camp program for these children with sickle cell disease under the leadership of Dr. Darlene Powers and Mr. Kenneth Morris, who preceded my coming on as camp director. I just fell in love with the kids and decided that this is what I wanted to do.
So please tell us a little bit about your organization, the Sickle Cell Foundation of California. When was it founded? Where is it located? And has it always been located where it's located now?
It was founded in 1957 by a group of high-powered individuals here in the community. And it was founded under the leadership of several different bankers and other high individuals, city officials that really saw a need to try to pull together a community organization that could help people with sickle cell disease. So it started in Los Angeles, California, October 17th, 1957. So next year, the Sickle Cell Disease Foundation of California, as it is now called, will celebrate its 60th anniversary as a community-based organization serving individuals with sickle cell disease.
That is fantastic, and if I'm not mistaken, you are the oldest sickle cell organization in the country. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
That's fantastic. So you are going to be hitting your 60th year at Martin Center, which is also one of the older centers in the country. We started in 1969, and we're getting ready to hit 50. So you're way ahead of us, and that's great. I'm really happy that the founders had the vision to establish your foundation so early on. So you said something about who the founders were. Did you say high-powered people like bankers? Is that what you said?
We had Mr. Paul Hudson. That was one of the individuals. But the real push for the development of the organization was under the leadership of 4 African-American physicians.
Okay.
And they were individuals that were constantly being asked in their rounds, in their daily work, what is sickle cell disease? And they really didn't have a good answer for those that were asking, and decided that it was incumbent upon them as African-American physicians to find out what this disease was and how we could begin to help the community deal and cope with sickle cell disease. The original name of the organization was the Sickle Cell Disease Research Foundation.
Okay.
And its focus at that time was to raise money to be able to support research in sickle cell disease. As part of our history also, I understand that the very first research grant ever given in the country for sickle cell disease came out of our organization. It was a $500 grant that I believe, if I can recall correctly, went to an organization, I think maybe at Howard University. I'm not sure, it's out of state. But anyway, that amount of money helped to purchase a piece of equipment that was going to be used in research for sickle cell disease. So a few years after that, NIH began to look at sickle cell disease and researching the disease. So history tells it that we were the first to give a small research grant. And throughout probably about 30 years of the organization, the focus for raising money was to provide small research grants. And over a period of about 30 years, our organization awarded $2.4 million in research.
Okay.
Much further ahead than NIH and NHLBI in terms of when their funding started for research in sickle cell disease. So that's one of the little nuggets that we think we made a real good footprint in the sand for research in sickle cell disease.
I would absolutely say so. And for those that are listening that maybe don't understand the acronyms, NIH stands for the National Institutes of Health. And
my apologies.
That's fine. That's why I'm here. The National Heart, Lung, Blood Institute is NHLBI. How many? Well, let me go back and say, what is your coverage area, and has it always been the same, or have you expanded or contracted since the days you were founded?
The coverage area is now pretty much the entire state of California, with a large focus, as you would imagine, on Southern California.
Right.
When we were founded, it was specific to Los Angeles because that's where the majority of the people were that were requiring services. Matter of fact, during that time, the early stages, and after the National Institutes of Health started to provide dollars, there were 2 comprehensive sickle cell centers in Southern California, very close to each other, actually. MLK had one, Martin Luther King Hospital had one, and LA County USC Medical Center had another. Throughout, though, the history of the state, there was a lot of money that used to come in for education awareness, counseling, screening, etc., through the State Department of Health Services. Unfortunately, when those dollars started to shrink and or the initiatives started to change, many of the nonprofit community-based organizations that benefited from those dollars had to close their doors,
right,
because they only relied upon that one stream of revenue.
Okay.
And that when that started to happen, and those doors started closing, obviously the care for individuals with sickle cell disease through community-based organizations just disappeared. So we then became the Sickle Cell Disease Foundation of California, as we were being asked to spread our resources around the state. And at this time, we've moved out of Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is very dense and highly populated and very competitive. And we moved to our second largest area where there is a need for sickle cell disease, and that is in the Inland Empire in the San Bernardino County. And our office now is located in Ontario, California.
Okay.
We do still have a very strong presence in Los Angeles, but now we are focused here in the Ontario area, where there are several hundred people with sickle cell disease that have not had any community-based support since 2000. So about 15 years.
Thank you for that, Mary. I mean, and this is, you're touching on something that is critically important. Even here in Indiana, you know, Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative is the only community-based organization providing services in the entire state. And certainly we are not the size of California, but there are cities within the state of Indiana that have larger populations of sickle cell patients that have no place like us to turn to, and of course the resources that are available to us limit our ability to reach them. So what about California? Are you the only fully active and staffed, if you will, community-based organization in the entire state? Or I seem to remember my favorite town is actually San Diego, and I do seem to think that there was a small or is a small organization there. Is that still there, and or are you the only one?
Yes, we are the only one right now, Gary, in California, which really does, you know, carry a pretty heavy load for us as
Yeah.
we try to move around the state. We do have some small organizations that aren't staffed up in the Bay Area where we, you know, collaborate with them from time to time. And we are working on now trying to establish relationships in the San Diego, El Cajon area, as well as in the Bakersfield, Fresno area. So we're trying to go central and all the way down to the border, and we're still looking to establish some rapport and collaboration with UC Davis Medical Center in the Sacramento area, because there are a lot of patients around the state that need to have some support. So
Right.
We've got our work cut out for us. The challenges, I'm sure you can appreciate, is manpower and money.
Yeah, sure. That's what it all comes down to, and that's the thing that we continually try to reinforce, is that we can't provide services if we don't have the resources to do that, and in order to have the resources, we need funding. And but certainly a state the size of California, with the demographics that are there and the prevalence of sickle cell disease within those demographics, it just is sad that, you know, there's not more there and more support for you to be able to do what you have to do. Speaking of which, how many clients or members do you actually serve, and has that number been the same over the last few years, or is it changing up and down nowadays?
It changes. We have an active database of about 900.
Okay.
And we, because of the immigrant population here. From time to time, we'll see an uptick, for example, in our summer camp program, where we will get maybe 30% new people that we've never even had contact with before.
Uh-huh.
So the numbers do change. The demographics have changed. We have a lot of African immigrants. We have a lot of people from Mexico and from the other native countries. And so our numbers fluctuate more and more, but we also know that there are probably people, particularly in Los Angeles, that really are not able to haven't accessed us yet.
Okay.
So our goal is to continue to pull forward all these individuals that we can through education and resources, and trying to be present and available when at all possible.
Okay. And so, what about the demographics? So you mentioned some of that, but do you have any sickle cell patients that are, your clients and members that aren't of African heritage? And if so, about what percentage of your client base would they represent?
We are probably at about 15% Hispanic.
Okay.
The Hispanic population, and we're probably around 20% for African immigrants at this point.
Okay.
So it's pretty diverse.
Okay. And what's really interesting, Mary, you and I were both in New York at the Mass Therapeutics Conference a couple of weeks ago. And there I spoke with Dr. Miguel Aboud, who actually is practicing in Beirut, Lebanon. And he told me that there in Beirut, they're getting Syrian refugees, and he said that their actual number of patients that they're treating is increasing somewhere between 7 or 8 patients a week, mostly coming from Syria, which is quite interesting. And I only bring that out because we continually need to remind people that sickle cell is a human condition that affects any ethnicity, and we're hearing about Syria every day, but I don't think too many people are making the connection that some of these refugees have sickle cell. Well, judging from what Dr. Aboud told me, I think that's something we need to be concerned about. So I just think that we need to keep talking about that if we can. So what about the ages of your clients? Do you have a larger number of older individuals, or are most of them children and adolescents?
Most of them are young adults, and I would say that we start getting our population starts kind of ramping up about the age of 7, and we do work with newborn moms from time to time, but because the population is serviced well by the pediatric providers, then we tend to spend a little bit more time with those that are on the edge of having to transition and go into adult care. I think the largest number of clients that we service really and try to stay very close to is about I'd say about 40% between the ages of 15 and 35. That's probably about where our largest numbers are. With older adults with sickle cell disease, there are a couple of very good support groups that were started by Carolyn Rowley, and she really manages them well in the Los Angeles area, along with Sheila Marchbanks out here in the Inland Empire. So we see a lot of adults when we do workshops and trainings and things of that nature, but a lot of our work is really with the youth and young adults here in our organization. We always take the babies, though, no matter when, where, and how. So the doors are open for everyone.
I'd say that that's pretty similar to us, too. I think the majority of our client members are, in that same age range that you mentioned, somewhere between, 18 and 35. It's just that we have a much smaller population of people that we're helping than you do, and that's, of course, because we're in a much smaller state in a much smaller metropolitan area. But anyway, thank you for that. So what about your staff? What size staff do you have?
Right now I have 5 full-time staff and 4 part-time staff.
Okay. And is that changed any over the last few years? Is that up or down?
That's up since we were awarded the newborn screening grant from SCDAA. My 4 new staff are community health workers that support that project. So we have 4 staff dedicated specifically, for the newborn screening project.
Okay. Mary, you're giving us great information, and I hope those that are listening are getting a sense of what you're doing out there and who you're working with. We're going to step away for a quick break, and then when we return, we'll continue our discussion with Mary, and we're going to talk a little bit more about her organization, and most importantly, we're going to end up talking about how she helped establish an adult sickle cell clinic there in L.A., a place where you would just sort of automatically think there already was one. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, and I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host. We're back. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. I'm Gary A. Gibson, and I'm speaking with Mary Brown, the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation of California. Mary's been at this a long time. She has helped literally thousands of people with sickle cell, and definitely want to take this opportunity to thank you, Mary, for everything that you've done over the years to help people with sickle cell. I truly am one that appreciates your efforts and your dedication. So thank you for what you do. I'm going to change the direction of our discussion with you, and this is important again. And one of the things that I've told people that I hate, there's actually only one thing I really hate about the job that I do, and that's trying to raise money. I just don't like asking people for help. I like to give help. I don't like to ask for help. I like to give help. But a large part of my job, and I'm certain a large part of yours, is about chasing money. So let's talk about that for a minute. And I think that most of the people that we serve, you, me, and all of the other organizations around the country that are helping people with sickle cell, I think that those that we all serve collectively don't understand how difficult it is for us to find funding. What are your thoughts about the challenges that organizations like ours face when it comes to finding support for our efforts?
I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think that one of the things that I struggle with, that we struggle with here in our organization, and even at our board level, is the fact that we don't have the kind of support that we would expect from the population that we serve. And I think that this is one of the downfalls and one of the challenges and struggles that we have, in as much as other diseases who are able to garner support as in terms of volunteerism and other resources from those that are affected by maybe heart disease or diabetes or cancer or AIDS or
cystic
any of
fibrosis,
the other number of right, hemophilia. I mean, all of them. We just don't have the base. I don't want to say it's all economic, because I don't believe that.
Okay.
But I do believe that there continues to be a lack of awareness about sickle cell disease. I think that there is still a stigma for some attached with having sickle cell disease, and no one wants to talk about it. I have, and I'm sure you have as well, met and come across people who are very well off, whose families do have sickle cell disease, but they just don't have a desire to get involved or to support the sickle cell disease cause. And that's disheartening for people like you and me.
Oh, absolutely.
Really trying to make this thing work.
Not only is it disheartening, it's confusing. Not only is it disheartening, it's confusing. I don't understand that,
I don't either.
Okay.
I'm with you. I don't understand it either.
No. Has it, in your opinion, become any more or less difficult to find funding since you started in your position?
Yes, and one of the bigger things, I believe, has been the change in the way people see giving. From the perspective of individuals who give, let's just say, people who work for utility companies, the gas company or the phone company, and used to give through United Way. Workplace giving used to be huge in the sickle cell disease space. And now we don't get those dollars. We have the millennials now who are beginning to, control the purse strings of some of these organizations and corporations. And they're more from the hands-on, let me get involved, let me see what's happening here, let me volunteer, let me see how you work. So there's a different lane that we've all had to start driving in that really has shown us that there's going to be greater challenges ahead to think that these big companies who used to give through their workplace giving to our organizations, that's not going to be the same as we go down the line. And I think that that's really one of the biggest challenges. Again, I think, and I said this in New York, we don't have the right messaging or branding for our communities. And we need to have a single message that is crafted and is something that we all buy into, is something that we all use, so that we can get a single message out to the whole, not just within the states, but also, globally. Sickle cell disease is a global human condition, as you indicated earlier. But we are just all over the place, and we have not been able to center in on one single message that resonates throughout the community. I think if we can do that, that would help to fill some of this space. But I'm not sure what the other answers are in terms of helping us raise these funds. I think that's a start, but certainly we're in a challenged situation with this disease.
Well, we are, and I actually, I actually took note when you were talking about that in New York, and as I recall, you referenced it as the ABCs that we need to be better at. Mm-hmm. And that was really well said, and so thanks for sharing a little bit of that with us here right now. So you mentioned also the drop in workplace giving, which has affected us too. So do you get money from United Way, or if not, who are some of your funders?
We are not a United Way agency, and that was a decision made by the board years ago, because we were in excess of receiving over $100,000 in donor designation.
Okay.
And becoming a United Way agency, they would not have been able to give us or match that at that time. Mm-hmm. And then because of United Way initiatives constantly changing, we started to fall out of their bracket.
All right.
We have one company that I am just really pleased to say that has been with us for almost 30 years, and that's Herzog Contracting Corporation. They are based in St. Joseph, Missouri, under their current president, Al Landis. When they got a contract here in California and came to Los Angeles, they were looking for organizations to help to support. And fortunately, we were one of those organizations. Al Landis served on our board of directors and as a chair for many years. And currently, we still have representation on our board by a gentleman by the name of Michael Rogers, who is serving now as our treasurer, but is also an employee of Herzog Contracting Corp. So they are our steadfast number one. We've had resources come from Toyota Motor Company, but Toyota now is moving to Texas and just told us that they were not going to be able to support us any longer. And that's really hard, not just for our organization, but for the number of community-based organizations and agencies that Toyota supported while they were here in Southern California.
Sure.
Other than that, Kaiser Permanente helps us with a grant, but not many corporations at all, not many that we can really hang our hat on to say that these are our big ones. I will say again, but our biggest one continues to be Herzog Contracting. Secondarily, it was Toyota, so we're trying to figure out how we can possibly replace that kind of support that we've had. But other than that, it's maybe 1,000 here, 2,500 there, 5,000, 10,000 from time to time. But nothing nothing sticks. And I think that you know as well as I, Gary, that in the fundraising world, it really is, you have maybe a 3 to 5 year shelf life, if you will, with some of these corporations.
Right.
You know, and you're lucky if you get 2 years of funding, but usually it's going to stop at about 3.
Right.
So you have to be in a constant development mode, trying to figure out where your next dollars are going to come from.
Right, because it might take you 2 to 3 years or more to actually build a relationship to get somebody to give you some money in the first place, right?
There you that's right. That's
oh, God, we really wish people would understand this so much. And another thing that we would hope that people could understand is that you and me and everybody else that does what we do, we really are, like I said earlier, we're wanting to help people. We're wanting to help those that we serve. And there's lots of things that we might be able to do to improve the level of service that we offer. If we had more time to be able to direct that and maybe spend less time raising funds and more time working with our constituencies and others to build collaborations that can provide more services than we're able to provide now. So a lot of the effort and time that we spend on fundraising is time that we can't spend on trying to ensure that we're giving the best service.
I agree, and one of the things that I've learned over the years is, you know, all money's not good money.
That's true, too.
And that, you know, is another thing that we struggle with. Is this the right kind of opportunity to take on? Grants and contracts, for example, are extremely time-consuming when you have to manage them, and you're required to meet every time you turn around. That takes from me, and maybe from you, it takes from me away some of my creativity.
That's what I'm talking about.
I like to create ideas and figure out how we expand or grow or, you know, just kind of dress something up a little bit. But, you know, when you're constantly being bombarded with all this administrative kind of stuff, you just, at least for me, I just kind of shut down sometimes when it comes to my creative flow. And that then becomes a distraction to the whole program at time, you know, until I can regroup and get myself together. So,
I agree with you 100%. I agree 100%, Mary. And it's like, you know, another way of looking at it is I've always kind of liked to consider myself as visionary. I like to try to, you know, what is it we can do? What can we create? Like you said, what can we create that will make life better? But I end up having to spend a lot of my vision energy where can I find money instead of what can we do for you? And that's, you know, that is a tough thing. But thank you for sharing that information with me. We appreciate it. So let's change the subject. I want to talk about your big effort here. I reported on last week's show that you were involved in the establishment of a new adult sickle cell clinic in Los Angeles, and I was surprised to learn that one didn't already exist there in a city of Los Angeles' size and demographic composition. And I think I was familiar that there was one a long time ago. But so how long have you been working on getting this clinic open? And tell us a little bit about it. Explain the clinic and what services is it going to be providing?
Well, the interesting thing is that I've been, again, working with the Center for Inheritable Blood Disorders, which is in Orange County, California, and we collaborated to and successfully get the one of the treatment demonstration grants offered by HRSA 2 years ago. And, you know, the goal there was to provide education and access to appropriate services for individuals with sickle cell disease. In Los Angeles, as I think I mentioned a little bit ago, we had 2 comprehensive sickle cell centers. One was at LA County USC Medical Center, and the other one was at MLK, Martin Luther King, under the direction of Dr. David Satcher years ago. And as time went on and money shrunk, so did the centers, the adult centers, the comprehensive sickle cell centers.
Right.
And let's face facts, though. Years ago, we were not planning to have adults with sickle cell disease.
That's true.
The early death was between the ages of 14 and 21. I mean, when I first got involved in sickle cell, they were saying nobody's going to live be past 21 years of age. So there was not this vision to take care of adults with sickle cell disease.
Right.
That's why all of the focus has been over all the years, and in part continues to be that for pediatric patients.
Oh, absolutely.
So when the adult population started to become the adult population, nobody was really prepared for that at all.
Right.
And now that people are living into their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, there's a gap. There is no comprehensive center. Dr. Cage Johnson at LA County USC Medical Center was our last big hope. And Dr. Johnson has basically retired at that point. When you have big institutions, if they don't embrace what you're doing, if they don't see the value, they're not going to try to continue on in that work. And I'm not saying that that is the reason the sickle cell program is just about completely closed at USC, but I think that that's part of it. He didn't get the kind of support he needed, maybe to hire somebody and train somebody in his stead. So we found that there were a lot of individuals with sickle cell disease between that age of 21 and 30 and 35, just kind of hobbling around because they didn't have anywhere to go. And the larger part in Southern California is the LA area, where we see several thousand. I think we estimated about 3,100 people in and around the LA area that have sickle cell disease. So we went to Dr. Mitch Katz, who is the head of the LA County Department of Health, by Susan Claster, who's one of our hematologists who knew him at San Francisco General. She asked him if we could have a conversation about sickle cell disease, and she gave him this, the whole scenario. And this was an email, and he wrote back and said, absolutely. Within a couple of days, we had a meeting in Los Angeles with Dr. Hal Yee. He spoke with Deborah Green, who's on my staff, Dr. Claster and Judith Baker, myself, and we described what we needed. And when we left there, we thought we had just kind of walked out of a zone, because Dr. Lee said, we're going to do this. We don't need any of your money. Let me get in touch with my CMO over at MLK, and let's see what we can do. We've got a brand new facility over there. Let's make this happen. Within 2 weeks of that time, we got a phone call from Dr. Ellen Rothman. The same team gathered. We sat around the table. She said, yes, let's do this. And so we started. Our first meeting was September 2nd, 2015, and we opened our clinic a few weeks ago.
What an incredible story.
So it's been just about a year.
That's incredible.
About 10 months.
About 10 months to make it happen, but it's going to be so worth it.
Make it happen.
Is it going to, is the foundation going to have any ongoing role, or are you, just part of making it happen?
We have, because of the newborn screening grant and because of the treatment demonstration grant, we have healthcare navigators and we have CHWs, all of whom have been onboarded at the hospital. We're still paying, them through our grant, but they are actively involved in the clinics. The clinic runs 2 days a week right now on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It is considered an advanced practice medical home. There will be integrated primary care, hematology, preventative care specific to sickle cell disease. Integrated behavioral health and counseling will be on site. They'll have alternative therapies for pain management. There'll be coordinated outpatient emergency and inpatient care. And of course, we'll do case management services there as well. Also on the campus, the individuals who go to the clinic will have neurology services, orthopedics, ophthalmology, cardiology, pulmonary and pulmonary functioning tests available, as well as gastrology, urology, and women's health. So it is a full service program. What we don't have, and it's something that we're trying to, again, educate our families about, is this is not a day hospital. It is not an infusion center. So people cannot come to this hospital to get oral pain meds and hopefully be on their way. We also do not have transfusion capabilities or pheresis because we don't have a blood bank there.
Okay.
But everything else you can get, it's going to be right there and right on the campus. So you don't have to go anywhere else but right where you are.
I think that's tremendously exciting, and I still, I really think that you deserve a lot of credit for pushing for it to happen and for helping to make it happen. We absolutely need more of those around the country. It's a handful or less that actually truly exist in that fashion. And that, too, is a shame, particularly when you see that there's 144 or so hemophilia clinics around the country. And when
right? I agree.
When you put it into that perspective, this is a shame. But we're starting to run out of time, and there's so much more I'd like to speak with you about, but I'm going to kind of cut it short. I'm going to take a different direction now with you, Mary, and I'm going to say that I'm going to ask you, what are the 3 things that bring you the most hope for sickle cell as you look down the road towards the future?
Oh, let's see. The most hope for sickle cell. I think people like you, Gary, those that are still in this fight, that gives me hope. I think youth that you touch that really do become interested in sickle cell disease, that gives me hope. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to really put together a strong message that we can get out to everyone about the importance of supporting and understanding sickle cell disease. I can't give up on that. I think that is our calling. That is what we need to do. And I believe that there's a lot that can be gained once we are all on the same page.
Right, and that, again, you're stressing that, and you're absolutely right. We've got to get on the same page. If someone you know won the California lottery and told you they were going to give you $1 million unrestricted for your organization, what would you do with it?
Well, what I would do would be to call together individuals with sickle cell disease and some of the other shareholders and ask them to provide me with some ideas.
That's a great answer.
We, as organizations, need to always understand the voice of the person that we're helping. What is it that they really need? They need to be able to share that information for us. So I would pull together several of my patient council groups and parent groups and say, okay, we have these funds. Let's all kind of agree where we want to put them. I would go with them to them first.
Mary Brown from the Sickle Cell Foundation of California, please know that I hold you in high esteem, a tremendous amount of respect for you, the work that you've done, the compassion with which you do it, the dedication to the cause. And I thank you so much for being with us today. How can any of our listeners that might be in your area that maybe don't know you exist, and believe it or not, folks, we have people right underneath our wing that say, oh, I didn't know you were there. Well, we've been here 50 years almost.
Right.
Well, we're here. So how can people get in touch with your organization? What's your phone number?
So our telephone number here is 909-743-5226. Or from the Los Angeles area, the number is 310-693-0247. You can also visit us at www.scdfc.org. And there's Twitter and Facebook and all those other kinds of places where you can see what we're doing. And feel free then to call us if you have any questions. If someone here needs a referral that you know, please have them give us a call. We'll do the best we can to make sure that they are serviced correctly. Anybody who works in the sickle cell disease arena needs to remember this. We are servants here. People trust us with their resources, and they trust us with their loved ones. And we have to make sure that all the work that we do here is directed completely at making life better for people with sickle cell disease.
So well said, and obviously 100% sincere. Mary, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we let you go?
No, just thank you, Gary, again. You do a lot of work, too, so I'm familiar with you and Indiana, so we just need to keep holding each other up when our legs get wobbly. Keep doing this
and
work.
I promise you we will. We'll see you in Baltimore next week. Thank you, Mary, for being with us today.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Mary Brown, the CEO of the Sickle Cell Foundation of California. Been doing that for 14 years, helping thousands of people over the time. It's time for us to close the show, and we'll do that as usual with some closing thoughts for you. And I'm going to start with a quote that says, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success." These are the words of Henry Ford. Henry Ford, who lived from 1863 to 1947, was an American industrialist, the founder of the Ford Motor Company, and the sponsor of the development of the assembly line technique of mass production. Although Ford did not invent the automobile or the assembly line, he developed and manufactured the first automobile that many middle-class Americans could afford. At the end of last week's show, I spoke about the good news that is happening in the sickle cell world. There is so much good stuff happening these days that I thought it would be worth it to shed more light on this topic. I want to do this because I want you to get a sense for the enormity of activity that is happening all around us. I want to share the names of just some of the entities that are working together to stop the pain of sickle cell. Of course, you have the local organizations that are doing the grassroots efforts to help spread awareness and education about sickle cell. You also have the local organizations that provide services, the nonprofits like Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative, the Sickle Cell Foundation of California, the Sickle Cell Disease of Illinois, the Sickle Cell Disease Association of Michigan, and the rest of the other 42 chapters of the National Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. Each of these local chapters is making a difference and working hard to improve the lives of people living with sickle cell. Their work is being augmented by the efforts of other community-driven organizations like the Sickle Cell Warriors, the Sickle Cell Community Consortium, and Sickle Cell 101, to name just a few. But the list certainly doesn't stop there. Many people would be surprised to learn about just how many governmental agencies are currently working to stop the pain. Included in this list are the Health Resources Services Administration, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, the National Institutes of Health, the Food and Drug Administration, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Each of these agencies now has some sort of focused and coordinated effort to address the many challenges posed by sickle cell. And they aren't alone. The work that these governmental entities is doing is being bolstered by many, many private organizations and or associations. The American Society of Hematology, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Emergency Medicine, the American Thoracic Society, the National Medical Association, and the American Public Health Association are names that readily come to mind when it comes to organizations that are currently demonstrating serious work on sickle cell. And let's not forget that many pharmaceutical companies that are working to develop new treatment options for patients that have had only one drug since the one that was introduced in the 1980s, hydroxyurea. You can count Mast Therapeutics, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Novartis, Global Blood Therapeutics, Prolong Pharmaceuticals, MS Life Sciences, Solexus Pharmaceuticals, and Biogen Sangamo among the companies that are working diligently to find treatments that stop the pain in some way or another. There is so much happening that the best word I can use to describe it is simply incredible. These really are exciting times for sickle cell, and they are proof that one day we will realize what Henry Ford was talking about. One day we will see that all of this working together will bring success. That's our show for today. Please join us again next week, same time, same station.